Good evening, friends. Meeting after a big gap of 5 days. So sorry for inconvenience caused. In fact, it was a big break, but we'll start with the next chapter from the Kent's philosophy, that is the oversensitive patient. This is the last chapter from the first 70 aphorisms. It is the philosophy which is related with the first 70 aphorism, that is the theoretical part of organ of medicine, as explained by J.T. Kent in his lectures. So this is last lecture related with the theoretical part of organ of medicine. And after this, after completing this chapter, we'll directly shift towards the chapter of 23. Because we have to learn certain basic aspects and then we have to go towards the miasm. In between chapters, they are related with the chronic diseases. We'll keep them aside and then we'll go forward. So today we'll start with the chapter number 16, that is the oversensitive patient. And it has been related with the aphorisms in between, that is related with the aphorism number 44 and next further aphorisms up to the 70. Certain aspects about it he has tried to mention over there. So we'll directly enter into the subject of today, that is the oversensitive patients. Lecture number 16, Organon aphorism 44. Drug poisoning, such as we referred to the last lecture, is not always due to the prescribing of crude drugs. If you work among sensitive patients, you will come across those who have been actually poisoned by the inappropriate administration of potentized medicines. These are oversensitive patients who have received repeated doses of medicine after the medicine, repeated doses of medicine after the medicine, and the dose that was homeopathic to their condition was administered. So what he is explaining that there are both chances that crude drugs causes the poisoning, that already we know. If we give the medicines in larger doses and the patient reacts, because it used to produces the primary action over there, and that's why that can be acceptable. But at the same time, he make a caution that if you unnecessarily go on repeating medicine after medicine, so if you today you have given certain medicine, tomorrow you would have changed the remedy, third day again you have changed the medicine, you are producing a different state. You are jumbled, and at the same time the patient's susceptibility is also jumbled. The reaction never comes properly. And this happens because certain patients are there who are able to react to a single dose also. They are hypersensitive patient and who react to a single dose, or only few doses of medicines are sufficient to bring back the cure. But if you go on repeating, they start proving the medicines. And this is possible with the unnecessary repetition of the medicines. So these are oversensitive patients who have received repeated doses of medicine after medicine, and dose that was homeopathic to their condition was administered. So if you would have given, for example, we'll take a simple example, if you would have given him a causticum 1 ml, and patient has reacted to your dose on day 1 only. After giving causticum 1 ml, it has acted, it has produced immediately its own effects. But if you still going on repeating the causticum 1 ml again and again, the patient never reacts. In fact, he starts reacting in a exaggerated manner, and he used to produce many times a homeopathic aggravation or a drug proving. This happens if the patient is sensitive enough. If patient is not sensitive, it never causes the problem. But if patient is hypersensitive, oversensitive, these types of reactions may happen. If a drug that is really homeopathic to the case is continued, after enough has been given to cure, a miasm is established in some cases by that drug, and this miasm initiates one of the chronic diseases or one of the acute miasms in accordance with its ability. I have a patient who has been suffering from 7 or 8 years from the effects of lachesis. I have patients who are suffering from sulfur and other deep-acting remedies which have been repeated too often when truly indicated, or repeated in sensitive patients when not truly indicated. The symptoms of the drug crop out periodically, years after it has been abused, and the periodical attacks are perfectly typical of the drug. The mineral substances which are perfectly harmless on the crude plane may be poisonous or dynamic on the dynamic plane when the patient is oversensitive. There are persons who can drink a glass of milk with impunity and be nourished by it, but upon whom a drop of milk potentized to a high degree and repeated beyond its homeopathicity will establish a miasm that will last for years. The brewer of Black Caninum had a return of its symptoms periodically. She was an oversensitive and proved the medicine indiscriminately and has suffered ever since from its poisonous effects, whereas if it has been given prudently, the disease would have established itself upon the body like any other acute miasm, would have run its course and disappeared. It is unwise to make provings upon the oversensitive subjects in that way. So he is giving examples that it does not mean that only the crude drugs used to produce its own poisoning, but in cases of oversensitive patients, if you give homeopathic doses, even in a potentized form. And if you go on repeating the doses, it used to produce harm. It used to produce its own proving. And that proving lasts for years. It is quite common if you repeat lachesis, very defecting and acutely acting remedy, and which produces its own effects. The Herring, who was the first brewer of lachesis, had suffered long time throughout his life with the lachesis proving. Because because these are the drugs which in oversensitive patients shows their action in such a manner that it persists for longer time of duration. He has given one more example of sulfur over there. Many times it happens that if you go on repeating the sulfur, patient starts getting the boils recurrently. And it goes on because you don't understand that there is not so much need if the patient is oversensitive. If the patient's susceptibility is low, the sensitivity is low, then patient might require the repetition. But if the patient's susceptibility is very high and he is oversensitive patient, you should be cautious enough even though you are using the homeopathic remedies in potentized form. He has given one more example of laccaninum over there. And what is there in laccaninum? The two things are present. One is periodicity, and another thing is that shifting from one place to another and again to the same place, going from right to left and again from left to right. This is what happens in laccaninum. And these things are quite common if you go on repeating it in oversensitive patient and patient starts proving them. It is unwise to make provings upon oversensitive patient subjects in that way. I tested a very high potency of lachesis on an oversensitive patient, giving but single dose, and that patient ran the course of lachesis disease in about 2 months. The symptoms disappeared and never returned. While the lachesis was in progress, the patient's chronic symptoms were suppressed. But after it ran its course and disappeared, her chronic symptoms came back. This is in accordance with the doctrine. She was oversensitive, and while the dissimilar lachesis disease was in full blast, her chronic disease was suppressed. There was instances when such a patient is truly homeopathic to the remedy. If if that remedy be repeated after enough, I mean the internal sense, has been given to cure it, seizes its homeopathic relation and action through the general susceptibility, creates a miasm upon this extremely sensitive patient. When a patient is hypersensitive, you must avoid the use of serum and other very high potencies, which will make your patient sick, and use instead the 30 and 200. In cases where the remedy is indicated, such potencies will work quite quickly. So he has given example of a lachesis, and this happens many times that if it is similar remedy, it's okay. But if lachesis is not very perfectly similar to the case, and it is a dissimilar, then that lachesis will show its effect. The original disease temporarily gets suspended as the second condition which we have discussed when two dissimilar diseases meet inside one human. And after finishing its course, the original symptoms reappear. And this is the example which he has given. If lachesis was prescribed dissimilar to the case, and how it has suspended the original disease for a certain time. But if it is similar, and if you go on repeating in higher potency, it may cause trouble because already the patient is full of energy, oversensitive. Oversensitive patients are always having a full sensitivity. In such types of patients, must be careful to utilize remedies in repeated doses. You should be cautious. You should not go on repeating the doses. You give it in single dose and wait. These are the persons who proves the remedy very fast. Even you give it in low potency, they start proving and proving at all levels. It depends upon two things. If the patient is oversensitive, this thing can happen. And if the drug is having its own acuteness, then this can happen. So this is too important to understand basically that if the patient is oversensitive, you should not go on repeating the medicines even though you are giving the potentized remedy, even though you have given the very perfect potentized remedy. This can happen. There was a question by Shahrukh, if a remedy chosen but not most similar, but due to some striking feature, like any modalities, etc., is that can be called dissimilar as like allopathy? Uh, it might be called as a partially similar modality. It is not called as a completely allopathy. If the partial simillimum is there, Hahnemann have explained the way how to go ahead. If you are not able to get a very perfect remedy, you have to give the partial simillimum. So we'll take simple example that will answer your question and that will answer many things in this lecture. If a patient comes with the 10 symptoms, out of which you have a remedy which is covering the 7 symptoms of the patient and 3 are not covered under that remedy. And there is no other remedy which covers all 10 symptoms. This is the most similar to that case. You choose that remedy, give it to the patient. What will happen? If that patient, after taking that medicine, those 7 symptoms should disappear because they are similar. But at the same time, during the drug proving, if that proving was not good enough or completed, and if these 3 symptoms also disappeared along with the 7 similar symptoms, it means these are the 3 symptoms which you have to include in your materia medica as a clinical symptom because they have disappeared under the action of the same medicine. That is first thing. Second possibility is that after giving the remedy, the 3 symptoms remains as it is, 7 disappeared, and there are appearances of the 2-3 new symptoms. This is called as a partially similar remedy. So how will you approach towards those cases? So the original 7 symptoms disappeared, original 3 were remaining, and now 3 were added newly. Now you have to make a totality. That totality includes the original remaining 3 symptoms of the case plus newly added symptoms. Take into consideration the whole thing because it is ultimately a reaction of that individual, and that's why those are considered to be a symptoms of the patient. Find it out another simillimum for the case. And here, if you get very perfect simillimum covering all those 6 symptoms, case can be cured. But if it happens that again you are not getting very perfect simillimum, you have to follow the same procedure till you get the cure. So this is very, very important. So this is what you have to understand. 3 will be eliminating symptom. No, eliminating symptom is rather different symptom. What is an eliminating symptom? Anyone knows what is an eliminating symptom? Eliminating symptom is the most striking characteristic symptom of the whole totality that should be taken as a first symptom in your evaluation. and only the remedies which are covered under that symptom should be considered for the further repertorization. Eliminating rest of the remedies from your repertorization is called as an eliminating symptom. So if you take a whole case and after taking that you find it out totality of 10 symptoms, and out of which one is very striking, that without that case will not be completed, that is very strong, then you take that as a first symptom. What has happened in earlier days, there was not there were not availability of the computers or softwares. We have to do a repertorization manually, and to manually repertorize, it takes a long time, 1 hour, 2 hours. So it never happens very common easily. So this method was found as called as elimination method of repertorization. And to find it out very perfect symptom of the case as a striking characteristic and taken into consideration only the remedies covered under that symptom is called as an elimination symptom. In fact, it is the most important symptom of the case that is called as an eliminating symptom. So this is one important thing you should make in your mind, should not get confused regarding it. So what he explains over there, he explains that how you should be cautious if you are using the using the remedies in potentized form even in oversensitive patients. You should be cautious not to repeat it. Then in aphorism 49, what he talks, Hahnemann says, we should have been able to meet with many more real natural homeopathic cures of this kind. If, on one hand, the attention of the observers has been more directed to them, and on the other hand, if the nature had not been so deficient in helpful homeopathic diseases. Hahnemann in aphorism 46 gives examples of these natural cures. We occasionally meet with these cures now. We find patients that are threatened with thesis go to the south because it has been proved that such cases can go into the vitiated climate and stay for a number of years and actually receive benefits from this disease producing neighborhood and go away well. Others go into the climate more wholesome and they are not cured. The miasms can cure all similar diseases and curing substances are in attenuated form. The evils that arise from the swamps are similar to the evils of the economy of the patient, and that similitude is antidotal, is curative, and causes changes back into order in accordance with the eternal law that governs the action of similitude. Now, what he has given, Hahnemann has, after aphorism number 44, he tried to explain what happens when two similar diseases meet inside a human being in the nature. And then he explains three important things. When two natural similar diseases meet inside one human being, they neither repels one another, nor suspends one another, and never forms a double complex or complex disease. But what do they do? The stronger one will remove the weaker one permanently. That is the word very important over there, that it never returns back. If if a patient who is having, for example, a neuralgia of the eye, and it is since long time patient is suffering from the neuralgia of the eye, and luckily he had a smallpox, he suffered from smallpox, which is much stronger, having one of the symptom of a neuralgia. When a smallpox comes, the original neuralgia disappeared and it disappeared forever. And then smallpox runs its course, and smallpox, when the patient recovers from the smallpox, patient goes into the state of health without having the original neuralgia which was there. This is what he wants to explain over there, that when two similar diseases meets inside one human being, the stronger one removes the weaker one permanently. That is nature's law of cure, and it happens in nature. That's why this law is deducted from it. And he has given multiple examples of such types of cures. And they are collected from the different allopathic journals. He has given and the reference behind that, that these are not mine, but these are mentioned in the allopathic journal. And from that, you can deduce there is a law which is called to be a nature's law of cure, and it ultimately heals that condition. So in this paragraph, he tries to explain the same thing. If the patient is having a symptomatology, having very similar symptomatology of a different disease comes in, the original disease having few of the symptoms which are common in both diseases, those symptoms disappear permanently. Now remains is only the new disease. And if that new disease disappears because of running its course, the original symptoms also vanish, patient can be cured. But this is not possible every time. And how much time you can wait for the nature to produce a similar symptom? That is the question Hahnemann puts. You cannot depend upon nature that the new disease will come and then your original symptoms will disappear. It never happens. It happens once in a life, once in a time. And if it happens once in a time, you cannot wait on the nature. Then what you can do? Now we have deduced the nature's law of cure. Now you produce a natural artificial disease which is very similar that to that of natural disease. You develop a disease inside the human being with the help of your potentized medicine, which will appear at the same plane as the natural disease and having the similarity in its manifestation. Only the kind is different. The original disease was natural disease. Now you have produced an artificial disease with the help of the homeopathic medicine. And now what will happen? The artificial disease, which is stronger, removes the natural permanently because that was the law which is deduced from the nature. And this is what we have to learn. Hahnemann have tried to explain all those things. And then in next paragraph further he says, there was a time in earlier days of homeopathy when taking into view the great array of disease forms to be contented with and the very few medicine, then at his command, the homeopath was worried to find remedies similar to that of his cases. That cannot be true now. If the homeopath will work in a systematic way, he will be able to command enough of the materia medica to meet all diseases that he comes in contact with, the symptoms of which are sufficiently observed. And here he explains exactly the things. Now, during Hahnemannian time, there were less number of remedies proved, and that's why there was a question of having or getting the perfect simile. But now the things are rather different. We have ample remedies in our materia medica. If you find it out new remedies and make a total, it will go about 3,000. And still, we are applying very few of them in our practice. This is the state at present. So you can get many of such types of states for which there is a minimum available in our homeopathy. If we are able to catch that, we have to just apply the nature's law of cure. We have to give that remedy which will remove the natural disease permanently, and the artificial disease which we have produced is under your control. If you stop giving the medicine, that also stop working, so patient will be cured permanently. And this he wants to explain over there in detail. I think we'll stop over here and we'll continue with next paragraph. It is a big paragraph, so tomorrow we'll continue with this. It will take 3 lectures to complete this oversensitive patient. But this point is very important to understand. One should not remain in the thoughts that homeopathic remedy never cause a damage. It may cause if unnecessarily repeated or not understood while applying the potencies and repetition. And that's why it's too important to understand exactly how the homeopathic remedies work, how it used to work in normal patients and in oversensitive patients. And that's why this part, which Kent has elaborated over here, one must take note of it. So that's all for today. We'll have a chat again in the evening at 8 o'clock with a new remedy, Drosera. It's a wonderful remedy. We'll have lot of things which we can learn in today's session regarding the Drosera. We know Drosera is a cough remedy, but it is not only cough. We have to understand the depth of Drosera in today's session. So be there at 8 o'clock and we'll have one more remedy in today, that is Drosera. Thank you being there. We'll meet tomorrow again at the same time. Thanks a lot.